because that is the responsibility of the governor of that state. I am not suggesting that all the electricity problems are the responsibility of state governors, so don't misunderstand me. But if you have an electricity problem in your state, please ask your governor what he plans to do about it, because he has powers to do something about it. Also ask your state House of Assembly member what he plans to do about it, because he now has power to make laws for generation, for transmission, and for distribution, for the governor to execute. And the same principles apply to primary education and primary health care. And I won't dwell on them more than is necessary. I think I've alluded to them. But if you have problems at those levels, all I'm going to say, primary education and primary health care, ask your local government chairman, not the governor. Sanitation, which is characterized by water supply and proper refuse management and civic education, they are not the constitutional responsibility of the federal government or that of your senator, who can only make laws for federal matters, or that of your House of Rep, who can make laws for federal matters, or indeed the president. It is our state that has that responsibility. So it is state responsibility and state representatives who have the responsibility to ensure that we have water, that we do not suffer from disease, that our surroundings are clean. The federal government does not have a water board. It is the state that has them. And that is the purpose they were set up for, to bring water into our homes. I expect that there will be responses, whether informed or informed, to some of what I've already said here. And I will say that, let me be very clear, that I have not come to absolve myself as a minister, or indeed any minister, or the senators, or the House of Reps, or the federal civil servants, and the president of responsibility. No. We have our responsibilities. There is a lot of scope for us to also do a lot more. But I first sought to clear the air and to state the facts for those right-thinking and indeed well-meaning Nigerians who honestly want a better life and do not know who is responsible for the problems that they face. So let me go to a very contentious issue: security. Section 14(2)(b) of the Constitution, and I've just chosen to quote this, says the security and the welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of government. That's what it says. Government. He didn't say which government. And I'm not making a very legal, I'm making a basic point here. I'm not being a lawyer in court. It says it shall be the responsibility of government. This is the same constitution that deliberately in some places said federal government cannot do this, state can do this, local government, you are the one in charge of primary education and primary health. The same constitution said security shall be the responsibility of government. It didn't say which government. And so please follow me, because my view is that security is an all government responsibility. All government. Not only federal government. I agree, and we all know that the federal government controls the apparatus of coercive law enforcement. We know that. So we've passed that stage where we have talked about the powers of the president to deploy the military and all of that. We know he controls that. But for some reason, the Constitution didn't say it's only him that should deal with security. And you know that I have been an advocate for states to control their law enforcement apparatus. I'm on record in public to have said that. More so when they have powers to make laws. But I hold the view that security, which is a concern of not a few people, is not necessarily guaranteed by controlling police. It's not the silver bullet. The fact that police exists is not a silver bullet for achieving security. There's much more that is needed. And that is why, again, I make the argument, apart from it being an all-government responsibility, I make the argument that it is more than a government affair. And in my view, it is an all-nation affair. All nation. And I think this is what is contemplated in section 24E, which provides, and I will quote this short section again, it shall be the duty of every citizen to render assistance to appropriate and lawful agencies in the maintenance of law and order. Every one of us here has this responsibility by our Constitution. But oftentimes we are busy with the chapter that deals with rights. We all know our rights, but how many of us know our duties? I urge you to read section 24. If that's the only section you read, please go and read it, of the Constitution. We all have duties as Nigerians, to ourselves, to our state, and to our communities. So it seems to me that the road to resolving our security problems starts with a resolution to prevent, and if we cannot prevent it, to ensure that we resolve conflict. But the best thing is to prevent conflict. But that's always very hard in a nation of so many people, so many interests, so many cultures. But we must have a conflict mechanism system. And in addition to that, we must eliminate the opportunities for crime to happen. And this requires effort from the family unit to the schools, the religious institutions, and to all levels of government. And this is very important. How vigilant have we really been as a people? The questions that used to be asked when I was growing up as a child: who is the new neighbor who just moved there? Who parked this car? We didn't see this car on our street, and it's been there for 2 days. And nobody is asking questions. And that may well be the car where guns are being dropped at night and moved in the morning. Who are the people in that unoccupied building? Who owns it? These are sitting items for security breaches. Somebody just gathers something and begins to trade in front of your house, and you don't ask questions. And you don't know where the person is from. And then the next thing, another person is sitting next to him. And they're actually casing out your house for the next assault. So these for me are things that we need to do. We need to reset our values for hard work. And there is a sense in which society even thrives in the belief that if you get a human head, it will turn to money. What's the scientific basis for that? But it is reflective of values that need to change. I read somewhere at one time, some people were taking ladies' underwear in the belief that it will make them rich. Who thinks like that? And so those belief systems must change from home, from the mosques and the churches and other places of worship. They can be reinforced in places like this in our discussions amongst ourselves. And we must shun ourselves of those kind of belief systems. They are not proven by science. Money is not a creation of God. It's men who made money. We must remember that. So it's printed in a mint just because it's a controlled capacity item. It's ink and paper. So how can a human head make money? And do you know how many people have died? In very mysterious circumstances, how many people are missing in ritual killings? Because of a belief system that we must quickly get rid of. And these are elements of security breaches. Of course, there's a lot of work to be done with monitoring drugs. Yes, Governor Marwa now, NDLA is doing a lot of work in conscientizing us and arresting and seizing whatever. But out of what is seized, how many has reached our children? And what are we doing about it? So is it the president or the governor that should come inside your house and my house to come and determine what substances our children are using? So there's a lot of work for all of us to do, and there's a lot that can be done at many levels, and even the schools and so on. But I think profoundly, apart from hard work and all of these values, I think what for me is the real deal is love for one another. Let us learn to love ourselves again, to be our brothers and our sisters' keepers, and we can bring down all of the security concerns and tensions. And once we do this, I also urge that wherever conflict happens, it must not last to the next day. It must end that day. And for me, this is where this is more than the job of the president or the governor or the senator. Because there are very many title holders here. The Obis, the Obas, the Emirs, the Ezes and the Baloguns and the Turakis and the Ashwajus and the Otuns and the Osis and the Walis and all whatnot. Those are building blocks and pillars of conflict management in society. They are also offices of responsibility. So, with the fame and the glamour comes very, very enormous responsibility for the communities where these titles are held to be involved in this process to bring down the incidence of conflict or to reduce the incidence. I cannot conclude this intervention without talking about roads. So, the whole territory of Nigeria, as one nation, has a little over 200,000 kilometers of road. 200,000 kilometers, just a little over that. And the three levels of government I've spoken to you about have their responsibility for each type of road. As federal government, my responsibility as minister is what is called federal trunk roads in the Constitution. It is item 11 in the exclusive list. They are mainly roads that take you from one state to another. Interstate road. That's the responsibility of federal government. The few exceptions are places like Lagos and Abuja, which used to be federal capital territory. So you will have places like Ahmadu Bello Way, now under construction by us, are still a federal road inside the city. Kingsway Road inside the city, Mobolaji Bank, Anthony Way, Ikeja inside the city. Those are some of the few exceptions. Otherwise, our responsibility is to take you from Lagos to Ibadan, to Oyo. I see Chief Amoje, we are not going to Awe yet. So the rest, so those federal trunk roads, let me make the point. Out of that 200,000 national network, those federal trunk roads amount only to 35,000 kilometers. About 17% of the national network. The remaining are state and local government roads. So in the way it is structured, the federal takes you from state to state. The state roads take you from local government to local government. So apart from Third Mainland Bridge, if you are coming from Yaba to this thing, and Lagos is not that example in purity because of the long federal presence where you have a co-bridge and all of those. But ideally, from Surulere, for example, to Mushin, if you went through Mabu and all of that, they are all state roads. And Banere knows Mushin very well. But the final road that takes you from your ward to the next ward, and those are the largest number of roads, are local government roads. And the question to then ask ourselves, let me look for the right words to pose this question. How many people's livelihood depend more on leaving their state every day as against those that depend more on being able to leave their local government to another local government every day? Is it clear? How many of us make our living by leaving our state every day as against by leaving our local government in the population? So I leave you to figure that out. So very quickly, of course, we all want some extra cash, and that has to do with how the economy is managed, fiscal policy, monetary policy, and all of that. And there's a lot of work that can be improved at the federal side. But again, when we really look at it, the bulk of the economy, the largest employers of labor, are the micro, small, and medium businesses. They are located inside states, in local governments. And they can do a lot more by the lack or the presence of state action, local action, and the protection from some of the extortionist tendencies of some non-state actors. And so that is a place to do a lot more. And of course, on the housing side, let me just say that, well, if we wanted to build more houses, we would have to look more to the states, because the states control the land, not the federal government. Federal government does not control land. The land that the federal government has today were given to them by the states. And land is a major component of housing construction. But let us leave the construction side. Let us go to rental, because no nation has 100% ownership. And those who are more vulnerable, who suffer inequality, who live on the fringes of society, are often more people who have to pay rent. I see Baba Alex Yemi looking at me, and I hope I'm not going to run into some stormy waters. But I'm talking about rent, sir. Because I know that you own not a few properties. But the point to make really is that in a society where we are asking people who receive their income at the end of the month in arrears to go and bring 3 years' rent in advance, there is a very, very, very big mismatch. That is not the president. And if you talk to people, if you interact with people when rent is due, how vulnerable, how scared, how worried they are. And again, the properties where this happens are largely, if not totally, privately owned. And is it possible? Is this just something that something can move us to lower that demand? Just to lower it a little bit. 6 months, 3 months, and maybe one day we will collect it monthly. And one day, even in arrears. Did I say something wrong? Elijah Ojikutu, you are joining the laughter. So, but it happens in other places. Those places where we love, those places where we want to be like. And I am sure that it will happen in my lifetime. Because it is a major reason of so many inconveniences. Just imagine what would happen if my salary comes and the demand for rent comes at the same time. How much convenient and easier life would be. Interestingly, the federal government cannot legislate on rent. It's a state matter. And this state has a history, very proud history, I must say so, in military and in civilian times of rent control laws. And there's still a lot that can be done. I hear that at least in some places there have been compliance to 1 year, even if there are still some defaulters, by the last intervention during my time here. But I must tell you, that intervention was not easy. Because even in my own cabinet, I was opposed. There's also a lot that can be done in terms of mortgages. There's a federal mortgage bank collecting contributions from workers. But there's nothing that says the states can't play here. LBIC, and many of you will recall, was Jack Monday's mortgage bank here. So is your state participating in that area, opening a mortgage bank to assist, to support people with mortgage lending? So I conclude that there's a lot to expect of a president, but there's perhaps much more to ask of the state and local government actors. After all, when we think about it, the projection of national might and success on the international stage by the heads of government, such as presidents and prime ministers, whether in terms of their food, whether in terms of the technology, whether in terms of sports or the economy, is really the projection of the aggregate of what happens at their subnational entities. Do you get that? So when one country is saying we are this, the president is saying we are very good in this, if you go down, you will see that it is one state that is actually, or two states. We are good in manufacturing. It's happening in one or two states. Our education is good. Our healthcare is the projection of the aggregate of what happens in the subnational entities that the presidents take abroad. So now that you know who to ask about primary education, about primary health care, about water supply and refuse management, and you know who you have not asked about electricity and security and interest rates, and you know who to ask about the road that is not taking you outside Lagos, Please know that candidates will soon begin to emerge as 2023 beckons. Do not keep quiet. Ask them what they will do to make your life better, and you can invite them to places like this. Thank you for listening.